says those who originally leaked the cables are legally liable, and he's questioned whether US security is adequate. Julian Assange remains in police custody in London. He's facing another court appearance next week.
The Wikileaks founder, Julian Assange, has spent his first night in a British prison as he fights extradition to Sweden over claims he sexually assaulted 2 women there. But it's Wikileaks' release of thousands of US official documents that continues to create diplomatic ripples all over the world. The latest intervention comes from Australia. Its foreign minister, now out of step with many allies, appearing to blame America, not Mr. Assange, for allowing the release of the confidential cables.
Well, I have been pretty consistent about where core responsibility lies in this entire matter, and that lies with the release of an unauthorized nature of this material by US personnel.
Kevin Rudd, who himself was described as a control freak in one US cable, also says Mr. Assange will now be given help as an Australian citizen to clear his name.
He has, in my view, complete entitlement to the presumption of innocence before the law, and our job as the Australian government is to ensure that he has full access to the normal consular and legal services that we would seek to provide to any Australian.
The latest cables also detailed the controversy surrounding the release of the Lockerbie bomber Abdul Basit al-Megrahi from a Scottish prison in 2009. Freed on humanitarian grounds after being given 3 months to live. But the documents say there were also threats to British commercial interests. The then British ambassador was quoted as saying that the Libyans would cut us off at the knees if he remained in jail. The US ambassador described the Libyan regime as essentially thuggish. Even behind bars, Julian Assange and the organisation he founded still have the potential to cause more diplomatic rifts. Jonathan Beale, BBC News.
Well, Stacey Hilliard is the Vice Chairman of Republicans Abroad UK, and I asked what she thought of the argument that the core responsibility lies with the United States.
I think Kevin Rudd has his right to criticize the U.S. government and the security, and I think every government is going to actually start to reassess their cybersecurity and their policies that they have as to who can access information. But to say that Julian Assange is not actually responsible for publishing the leaks, I think, is absolutely absurd.
But if the United States had kept its classified information safe in the first place, none of this would ever happen. It seems painfully obvious how easy it was for this all to emerge.
Well, that's like saying if you go to a shop and there's not a security guard at the door that you're able to walk out with the goods without paying. And I think that this is classified information. This is information that wasn't meant to be publicized, and actually this is an illegal act and this is a crime.
Well, why are you saying it's an illegal act? Because there seems to be a lot of doubt about whether he is actually guilty of a crime under US law.
Well, it's classified information, and the publishing of classified information is an illegal act.
Well, except that there is, I don't want to get too much into the details of it, but there is a lot of legal debate, which I'm sure you're aware of, about whether he actually solicited this information, which seems to be a key part of any legal argument against him.
They've spoken about the Espionage Act, that this is possibly an illegal act under that act in the U.S.
So are you against whistleblowers in general, or is there something special about this particular case?
No, I'm not against whistleblowers, and I think there's a difference. I think it's important to realize that Wikileaks is not a news organization. This is not investigative journalism. That this is actually stolen material that's been published that puts people's lives in danger.
Okay, well, would you have felt differently if the stolen material, as you put it, if some of those cables, for instance, brought out the details of a plot, for instance, to kill US citizens? How would you feel about the release of that information?
I think it's hard to say hypotheticals with that, in the sense that if it's released before the fact or after the fact.
Well, let's assume for the case of argument that it was something that actually enabled action to be taken, a terrorist group to be uncovered. Would you feel differently then about the cables?
Well, I don't think if it's being released that it's actually going to allow the public to go into action.
Well, I'm putting in a hypothetical argument to you, but the point I'm trying to get to is whether or not it is the principle of classified information being breached that's the point for you, or what the content of that classified information is.
I think it's the content of it. And the fact
so you accept it's a subjective viewpoint then that you're taking?
And there's a responsibility that has to be taken when you are given a leak or a whistleblower comes to you as a journalist, if it is investigative journalism, which I don't believe that this is, and that if people's lives are going to be put in danger, that you have a responsibility to report on that responsibly, or to make the decision that this is going to put U.S. security in danger, this is going to put American lives in danger, and therefore it shouldn't be published.
Hasn't it increased our understanding of how international diplomacy works?
I think it's increased the understanding that people know that governments actually do talk openly with each other, and I think that's a good thing, and I think that what these leaks are actually going to do is prevent governments from having that open conversation.
But then you should be then pleased that the implication is that we won't see more of this kind of information coming out. Perhaps it's been a wake-up call.
Well, you can say that actually Wikileaks has been counterintuitive in the sense that their idea is to actually promote transparency, and I think what you'll actually have is governments tightening their security and being less transparent within their own government, with their public, and with allied governments as well.
Stacey Hilliard of Republicans Abroad UK, and if you'd like more details of the legal case surrounding Julian Assange, they're on the BBC website. Let's